My name is Daniel Mercer, a retired high school shop teacher from Kingston, Ontario. At 61, I spend most of my mornings in the garage, surrounded by the smell of cedar shavings and machine oil, building little wooden projects for my granddaughter, Hazel. It keeps my hands busy and my mind comes something I've come to rely on more than ever since my wife, Claire, passed away 3 years ago. On the afternoon, everything changed. I was sanding the edges of a small jewelry box I planned to give Hazel on our upcoming family cruise. That trip had been my idea, an adventure through Alaska, the place Claire always dreamed of visiting. I thought it would be a way to bring us together again. My son, Ryan, his wife Melissa, and little Hazel, a chance to bond, laugh, heal. Something hopeful. I'd paid for everything. The balcony cabins, the excursions, the private wildlife tour Ryan said Hazel would love. Nearly $19,000. Scraped together from pension savings and a bit of inheritance I hadn't touched until then. It felt worth it. Memories meant more than money. My phone buzzed on the workbench. I wiped the sawdust off my fingers and glanced at the screen, expecting a message about groceries or maybe Hazel's latest drawing. Instead, I saw a text from Ryan. Hey, Dad, we need to talk about the cruise. Nothing good ever starts with that sentence. I opened the message fully, and as my eyes scanned the words, a coldness settled deep in my chest. Melissa and I have been thinking this trip might be better if it were just the three of us. We want some nuclear family time. You understand? We'll plan something with you another time. I read it twice, then a third time. Each repetition felt like I was being pushed further out of a circle I'd spent my whole life building, just the three of us. Nuclear family, another Chimmy. The jewelry box in my hands suddenly felt ridiculous, a relic from a grandfather who was apparently not part of the real family. I walked inside, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Claire's framed photos sat on the mantel, her smiling at me on our trip to Banff, her cheeks pink from the cold. I stared at it, and for a moment, I felt ashamed. Ashamed for feeling like I needed this trip so badly. Ashamed that I had believed Ryan wanted me there. My phone buzzed again. Also, Dad, our cards are maxed right now. Can we use your credit card for some of the onboard expenses? We swear we'll pay you back. The words punched me harder than the first message. Not only was I excluded, I was expected to fund their vacation anyway. I sat at the kitchen table and exhaled slowly. Something inside me didn't crack. It crystallized, sharp, clear, cold. A realization that maybe, just maybe, I'd have been ignoring a truth about my son for a long time. And for the first time in years, I felt myself beginning to wake up. I stared at my son's message for so long that my coffee went cold beside me. The house felt cavernous, like every word Ryan had written echoed off the walls. Do you know how long I sat there before I finally picked up the phone and called him? He answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. I could hear Hazel's giggles in the background, that soft, airy laugh that had always been the highlight of my week. Hey, Dad, he said. Saw your missed call. Everything okay? Not exactly, I replied, working hard to keep my voice steady. I need you to explain what you meant in that message. He sighed, the kind of sigh that carries annoyance more than concern. Dad, don't make this a big deal. Melissa just thinks it might be too much for you. You know, the walking, the long days, the late nights. We don't want you to feel like you're slowing things down. Slowing things down. I run 5 kilometers 3 times a week. I lift weights in the basement. I renovated my entire deck last summer. I'm 61, not 90, I said. Hesitated. Yeah, but Melissa's parents might meet us in Juneau, and we don't want things to get crowded. I blinked. Hard your in-laws are joining you, I repeated. Maybe, he said quickly. We're still figuring it out. My stomach twisted. So that was the truth of it. They didn't want space. They didn't want nuclear family time. They wanted me not to be there. Ryan, I said slowly, are you telling me I'm not welcome on a trip I paid for? There was muffled talking, Melissa's voice in the background, sharp, irritated, unmistakably carrying the tone of someone who believes she is owed something. Then Ryan came back on. Dad, we just think it's for the best. Hazel needs time with us. With her actual parents. Actual parents. as if my role was a vague accessory. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. My voice came out clear, steady, almost eerily calm. "All right," I said. "If that's how you feel, I'll cancel my ticket." "That's great, Dad," Ryan said, relief flooding his tone far too fast. "Thanks for being so understanding. And hey, about the card." I hung up before he could finish. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the house settle around me, feeling the kind of quiet that used to comfort me, now press in like a weight. Eventually, I got up, found my laptop, and pulled up the cruise details. All 3 bookings, mine, Ryan's, Melissa's, were under my name, all charged to my credit card. I hovered my cursor over the cancel reservation button. I knew what canceling meant. The prices were higher now. They wouldn't be able to rebook the same rooms. They'd lose their vacation. They'd lose everything they'd assumed I would keep providing, no matter how they treated me. I clicked. One by one, all 3 tickets vanished from the itinerary. A confirmation email arrived a moment later. I forwarded it to Ryan with no message, then turned off my laptop. When I leaned back in my chair, a strange feeling washed over me. Relief? Not joy, not triumph, just the quiet release of a burden I didn't realize had grown so heavy. For the first time, I wasn't letting myself be used. I was drawing a line, a boundary, and I felt free. The next morning, sunlight streamed into my room, but it did little to warm the heaviness in my chest. My phone was buzzing nonstop on the nightstand, a swarm of angry notifications. 9 missed calls. Dozens of messages. All from Ryan and Melissa. I ignored them. Instead, I made coffee and stepped out into the backyard where Dew coated the grass. For the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar but welcome. Clarity. A quiet knowing that I had finally stopped letting myself be pushed around. By the time I returned indoors, the phone buzzed again. This time, I picked up. "Dad, what the hell did you do?" Ryan's voice cracked through the speaker. "You canceled the whole cruise!" "I did," I said evenly. "I canceled a trip I paid for. You blindsided us. We were counting on that vacation." "Counting on a vacation you didn't want me to attend?" I reminded him. In the background, Melissa's voice cut in sharply. "Put it on speaker, Ryan." He obeyed, and soon her voice filled my kitchen like a cold wind. "Daniel, you completely overreacted. That trip wasn't about excluding you. It was about Hazel bonding with her parents. You overshadow everything?" I nearly laughed. "Overshadow! Melissa, I pick Hazel up from daycare. I buy her necessities. I show up. I'm not overshadowing. I'm supporting." "Well, it feels like overshadowing," she snapped. "And since you canceled everything, you need to rebook it for us. At the new price." I stopped pacing. "Absolutely not! You owe us!" she barked. "I owe you nothing," I said, and hung up. An hour later, my doorbell rang. Ryan stood on the porch, pacing like a caged animal. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He stepped in anyway. "Mom would be ashamed of you," he blurted. The words hit me like a punch. I steadied myself. "Don't weaponize your mother to manipulate me." He didn't deny it. He just clenched his jaw and looked away. "I want you to see something," I said. I handed him my tablet, showing a neatly highlighted list. The unauthorized charges on the emergency credit card ID given him the card ID canceled last night. Over $10,000 spent. Restaurants, weekend getaways, designer sunglasses, spa treatments under Melissa's name, all emergencies, apparently. "Dad," he stammered. "No," I interrupted softly. "Truth, Ryan." He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't think you'd notice. That hurt more than everything else combined." "And Melissa," I said. "What did she think?" He swallowed hard. She said, "You'd never say no." A cold silence filled the room. "Well," I said quietly, "she was wrong." He looked up, fear and anger swirling behind his eyes. "Dad, we're drowning financially. Melissa's business is failing. Daycare is killing us." "The house." "Your house," I corrected. "Not mine." "So you're just gonna let us lose everything?" "You made your choices," I said. "And I made mine." He stood abruptly, stepping toward me like he wanted to shake sense into me. You're choosing money over your own granddaughter. No, I said gently. I'm choosing self-respect. Something nobody in this house has given me in a long time. His face crumpled. He wasn't used to hearing no from me nots, ever. Ryan, I added, softer now. I love Hazel more than anything. But love doesn't mean letting myself be used. He blinked rapidly, tears threatening. Are you seriously willing to walk away from us? I'm willing, I said, to step away from the version of you that treats me like a bank instead of a father. He's there, watching me breathing hard. Tell Hazel I love her, I added. He nodded weakly and left without another word. The house felt painfully silent, afterward too still, too empty. I tried to lose myself in sanding the jewelry box again, but even the rhythmic motion couldn't quiet my mind. So I stepped onto the porch, breathing in the humid Ontario evening, and that S. When it dawned on me, a realization so clear, it steadied my heartbeat. For years, I had been bending myself into shapes to keep my family together. And in the process, I had broken something inside myself. Not anymore. Ryan was an adult. Melissa had her expectations, but Hazel deserved more than to be a pawn in her parents' financial chaos. So I made a decision, not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of love. Tomorrow morning, I would call a lawyer, not to punish Ryan, but to protect my relationship with the only person in that household who had never taken advantage of me, my granddaughter. The cruise was gone. The money was gone. The illusion of family harmony was gone. But I wasn't. I was finally standing up, and I wasn't about to back down. After a steady breakfast and a cup of strong black coffee, I sat at the dining table, the same spot where I had read Ryan's first message and dialed a family lawyer in Kingston. I half expected guilt to rise up, to choke the conviction out of me, but nothing came. Just calm resolve. The lawyer listened carefully as I explained the situation, the emotional manipulation, the exclusion, the financial misuse, and most importantly, the sudden threat to cut Hazel out of my life. When I finished, she said, Mr. Mercer, you have every right to seek formal visitation. Based on what you've described, the courts will likely take your relationship with your granddaughter very seriously. It wasn't comfort. I felt more like a gentle exhale, a release. We scheduled an initial filing appointment for the following week. By the time I hung up, my phone was buzzing again. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I set it down and went into the garage to work on the small wooden jewelry box. Hazel's name was burned into the lid, the letters curling gracefully the way she writes her own name in crayon. I ran my thumb over the wood, thinking of her last visit months earlier, her tiny hands covered in sawdust, her grin huge as she sanded a block of pine, lopsidedly. A knock at the front door pulled me back to the present. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered it. To my shock, Hazel stood there, clutching a small backpack. Ryan was behind her, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. Dad, we need a favor, he said, his voice strained. Just for the night. Hazel looked up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. Can I stay here, Grandpa? My heart softened instantly. Of course you can, sweetheart. Ryan swallowed hard. Melissa and I need to talk. Alone. I stepped aside. Hazel rushed past me, already heading toward the living room, where her old coloring book still sat on the shelf. But Ryan stayed on the porch, glancing toward the driveway as if expecting Melissa to appear. I'll pick her up tomorrow, he said, and then he left without another word. That evening, Hazel and I fell into an easy rhythm coloring, making hot chocolate, watching her favorite cartoon. Watching her ease into the comfort of my home made something ache deep inside me. It had been too long. When I tucked her into the guest bed, she hesitated. Grandpa, am I in trouble? It took everything I had not to break down right there. No, sweetheart, you're not in any trouble at all. She nodded slowly, though her eyes were still clouded with confusion. I sat beside her. Grown-ups sometimes fight, I said gently. But none of that is your fault, okay? She blinked up at me. Mom and Dad fight a lot. I know, I said softly, but you're safe here. She curled onto her pillow, finally relaxing. I like being here, she whispered. You're calm. It was such an honest, unfiltered observation that it pierced me. I kissed her forehead, whispered goodnight, and left the door cracked open the way she liked. When Ryan returned the next morning, he looked even more exhausted. Hazel clung to my leg, clearly not wanting to go. "Daddy, can I stay tonight too?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "No, Hazel. Let's go." I leaned down. "You'll visit again soon," I assured her. She hugged me tightly around the neck. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too," I whispered into her hair. Ryan said nothing as he led her to the car. It would be 2 long months before I saw her again. Despite the court's temporary visitation guidelines, Ryan and Melissa dodged every scheduled visit with excuses that grew more unbelievable each time. Hazel had a cold. They had plans. Melissa's parents were visiting. Hazel was emotionally fragile. Hazel was too busy. Each refusal became another documented note in my file. My lawyer remained confident, but it was draining. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Still, I stayed the course. I ran along the waterfront trail every morning, spent afternoons building small wooden toys or volunteering at the local charity shop. In some ways, I felt myself becoming a man Claire would have recognized. A man who stood up for himself. Meanwhile, Ryan and Melissa's life began unraveling publicly. Their social media posts shifted from cheerful family outings to cryptic laments about betrayals and lack of support. People commented with sympathy, but the truth seeped through. They had put their home on the market. Melissa's studio was closing. Ryan had lost his job. Even then, I stayed silent. I wasn't their banker anymore. I was Hazel's grandfather, and I was fighting for her. 6 weeks later, the court hearing finally arrived. I dressed in my best suit, the same one I'd worn to Ryan and Melissa's wedding years ago, and met my lawyer at the courthouse. My hands trembled slightly, but not with fear. With anticipation! Melissa and Ryan sat across the room, neither meeting my eye. Ryan looked defeated. Melissa looked furious. The judge reviewed everything, the messages, the canceled visits, the financial records, the tone of communication, and then she met my gaze. "Mr. Mercer, you have demonstrated a consistent, stable presence in your granddaughter's life. The court sees no reason to limit your access." She turned to Ryan and Melissa, her voice firm. "And I see every reason to enforce it." Her ruling was clear. Every other weekend with Hazel, 1 weeknight dinner, no exceptions. Any further obstruction would result in legal consequences. When the gavel fell, I didn't feel victory. I felt relief. And something like hope, distant but real. Outside, Ryan called out to me. "Dad, wait." I turned. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry for everything." But forgiveness wasn't a word I could hand out easily. "We'll talk," I said gently, with time. It was the first honest thing I'd said to him in months. I didn't know what to expect the first weekend. Hazel was scheduled to stay with me under the court order. Part of me worried Ryan or Melissa would try something, cancel last minute, invent another emergency, anything to keep control. But Saturday morning arrived with an unexpected quiet. No excuses. No delays. Right at 10 o'clock, Ryan's car pulled into my driveway. Hazel jumped out before the engine even stopped, her little backpack bouncing against her shoulders. "Grandpa!" she yelled, sprinting toward me. I knelt down just in time for her to crash into my arms. Ryan stepped out slower. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in that emotional way people shrink when life presses them too hard. He kept his hands shoved in his pockets, staring down at the gravel. "Thanks, Dad," he said quietly. "For doing this." I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything yet. When he drove away, Hazel and I went inside. She kicked off her shoes, raced straight to the shelf where her unfinished Lego spaceship sat waiting, untouched since the last time she'd been here months ago. "Can we build today?" she asked, already digging through pieces. "Of course," I said. "We can do whatever you want." We spent the morning on the living room floor, building, laughing, pretending to be astronauts. With Hazel there, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive the way it had when Claire used to hum while folding laundry or when Ryan was Hazel's age himself, bouncing rubber balls down the hallway. For lunch, I made grilled cheese the way Hazel loved, extra buttery with the crusts cut off. She sat at the table, swinging her legs back and forth, chattering about school projects and a friend who'd recently taught her French swear words which she refused to repeat. To my relief, It was the kind of day that filled all the cracks inside me. But eventually, Hazel paused mid-bite, eyes drifting upward. "Grandpa," she said softly, "Mom and Dad still don't talk nice." I froze, gently setting my sandwich down. "I'm sorry to hear that, Hazel." She traced a finger around her plate, thinking, "But when I'm here, it's quiet." I like the quiet. I swallowed the tightness in my throat. "You're always safe here," I said. "Always. Always." She smiled a little. "Grandpa, are you mad at Mom and Dad?" "Kids, they know how to aim straight for the heart." I thought about how to answer, how to be honest without putting weight on her small shoulders. "I'm not mad at them," I said finally. "I'm just learning how to take care of myself, and sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out." She nodded like she understood every word, even if she didn't fully. After lunch, we went to the park by the water. Hazel raced along the wooden pier, chasing seagulls while I watched from a bench. The wind carried the smell of the lake, the kind that reminded me of summers with Claire, kayaking, picnics, beer on the deck as the sun set behind the limestone buildings of Kingston. For the first time in a long time, those memories didn't sting. They warmed me. Hazel ran back, breathless, panting, cheeks pink. "Grandpa, look!" She held up a perfectly smooth stone shaped like a heart. "You should keep that," I said. "It's lucky." She'll put it in her coat pocket carefully. "Then I'm giving it to you, so you won't be lonely." That nearly broke me. "Thank you," I whispered. That evening, as Hazel colored in the living room, my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Dad, can we talk tomorrow when I pick Hazel up? Alone?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Yes." I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Ready to close one chapter and maybe open another. The next morning, Ryan arrived on time. Hazel hugged me goodbye, tucked the heart-shaped stone deeper into my pocket, and climbed into the car. Ryan didn't leave immediately. He stood beside me in the driveway, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. "Dad," he said quietly, "I know I haven't earned forgiveness yet, and I don't expect it right now, but I'm trying." I watched him, really looked at him. My son, flawed, lost, confused, but trying. "What happened?" I asked. He took a breath. "Melissa and I, we're separating." I closed my eyes briefly. "I'm sorry, Ryan." "No," he said quickly. "Don't be. It's been coming for a long time." He hesitated before adding, "I want to be better for Hazel and for myself. And I'm hoping one day for you too." A long silence settled between us. For the first time since Claire died, I felt something in our relationship shift. Not healed, not fixed, but thawed, softened. "I'm willing to try," I said quietly, but slowly. He nodded. "Slow is okay." Over the next months, Hazel's weekends with me became a steady heartbeat in my life. We built wooden boats, baked banana bread, fed ducks by the shore. Ryan slowly rebuilt himself, showing up on time, being respectful, cleaning up old debts. He never asked for money again and asked for me. I started living again. I booked a solo trip to the Maritimes, a dream I'd shelved for years. I walked the ocean trails, took photos, chatted with strangers who became friends. When I returned, I felt lighter, stronger, whole. The man who had once been desperate for inclusion had become a man who valued his own. Peace above all else. One evening, after Hazel had gone home, I found the heart-shaped stone on my nightstand. I picked it up and smiled. Hazel had given it to me so I wouldn't be lonely. But the truth was, I wasn't lonely anymore. I had my home, my hobbies, my freedom, my granddaughter, my slowly healing relationship with my son. And above all, I had finally learned the lesson Claire had tried to teach me years ago. Love never requires losing yourself. Real family doesn't ask for your dignity. And boundaries aren't walls. They're doors to self-respect. I placed the stone back on the nightstand. Tomorrow, Hazel would be here again. And this chimney, everything was different. This time, I was whole. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been on a similar journey of rediscovery, Remember to be patient with yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.